On the YouTube live. One moment here. Start streaming. Good. Go. Yes. Welcome everybody to the Obsidian Blade Medicine Hour of Power. We are a few days away from the fall equinox here in the northern hemisphere and the spring equinox in the southern hemisphere. And I don't think we ever really get over how wild that is, that in a planet of duality, that it can be both one half of the planet is going into fall and the other half of the planet is going into spring. Doesn't that ever trip you out? Pia, hello, good morning, how are you? Or whatever time it is, good to see you. I am just getting into the mood, for this episode. And I was going to call this episode the honest episode. Because that's what we need these days. We need to be radically honest with ourselves. And sometimes we can be faced with different amounts of self-deception. So what sort of life are we going to live if we're steeped in self-deception? And hey, if you wanted an easier topic, you wouldn't have come to Earth in the first place, right? So I'm just going to roll with, ending some self-deception and, again, being radically honest with where I'm at in my own self-deception as I just kind of manipulate YouTube Live for a minute. Right? Yeah. I think the crux of one of the many themes that's coming up is that you are needing to be really who you are. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but yes, lots of love, Ode Kaua. You need to be who you really are. I need to be who I really am. And I think in the age of social media, there is still that very natural human temptation to want to fit in. But who are we trying to copy? Who are we trying to copy? And if we look to nature as a guide, we see actual infinite diversity in nature, right? So if we think, okay, so right now in current society, we have this topic like diversity. It's like, ladies and gentlemen, that's, whatever your sexual preferences or whatever you think your gender is, at the end of the day, that's actually got nothing to do with diversity, okay? Once you've got that fucking handled of where you like to stick it or how you like to do it or whatever gender you want to be, true diversity is how you use this human life. What are you expressing? What are you engaged with? How are you utilizing your mind to focus upon things and expand them and grow them? And when we look at nature, we see what diversity really means. We see in nature source incarnate into millions, if not trillions, of infinite forms of expression in order to know itself. But, I kind of want to even just scrap what I'm just saying right now and be like, fuck it. How do you feel right now? I think we live in we know we live in an intense world. We live in two worlds at the same time. And one of those worlds is fighting for our attention. And that world is called the Matrix. And it's the artificial shit show that requires your human energy in order for it to exist. And I don't like actually I don't recommend anybody actually do this, but when we look at the news, which is actually just a bunch of paid actors selling us an agenda, right? Like, as I don't know if you agree with people like Alex Jones, but what he did represent was freedom of thought. Alex Jones being that internet and radio personality who just got depersoned off the internet. He has not allowed, the corporations have taken him off of the internet. Other than his own website, which he can barely operate right now because even third-party like plugins are banning Alex Jones. Can you imagine like having an opinion and then being completely banned from the internet? And whether or not you agree with his message or you're offended by his message, it is a telling sign of the times of what has happened in, basically where the matrix is at. So, a quick history is, look, the internet came around. It exposed who we are as human beings. It's brought about amazing changes, but suddenly people started thinking for themselves. They've always been thinking for themselves, and these independent thoughts are really taking hold. It turns out we actually just want to be who we want to be and not some sort of agenda or be under any sort of control. And he was calling that out, and he got shut down. The other thing and this is not conspiracy theory. This is you're seeing government after government go in and change the laws right now. So last week, the European Union voted to enact some pretty crazy stuff that's going to shut down independent media. So at the end, right now, laws are being rewritten, and they're being rewritten in the United States right now. And I need to create a whole list. This is all fact checkable. This is not hype. Right now, there are laws being made in the U.S. There's hype around Facebook has been charged with manipulating election results or swaying public opinion. You just gotta wake up to what's going on, and I'm sure you already are. It's just like the system wants you to do what it wants you to do. And right now, media is way too independent, and they know it, and they're shutting it down under lies and nefarious schemes as like, oh, there's foreign intrusion into our elections. Meanwhile, the hypocrisy of this government here in the United States is that the United States government meddles in other countries' elections all day, every day. It's called Central and South America, and this country has a very long and open history around that. So you're just seeing these crazy laws where independent media will be shut down because it counters the main narrative that the system wants to have in place. And so you're going to see a radically different internet within the next 1 to 2 years with these new laws that are actual real laws. These are not just ideas or conspiracy theory ideas that are being passed around. These are real laws that are being passed and debated right now in European Union, Australia, and here in the United States. And so I just bring this up because you're going to have to we're going to have come up with a contingency plan with how to get our information. I don't feel like things like Instagram, like we're connecting now, and Facebook will be safe places to connect within. Like I said, right now, they're not even really safe places to connect. But I think going forward, they're really not going to be safe places to connect, because here's what Facebook is doing. And I know this is, this is a self-improvement channel, a spiritual channel, but I'm telling you, there is a spiritual war going on, and its agenda is to keep you separated from your other collaborators who wish to get back to alignment with nature. And so right now, Facebook has an algorithm in place called a trustworthiness factor. You're either assigned a 1 or a 0 on Facebook. You're either considered trustworthy or not trustworthy. Now, this is a very interesting thing. Okay, that's fucked up to begin with, but also it's really interesting that they've assigned a 1 or a 0 to your profile, meaning you're trustworthy or you're not trustworthy. So more and more, we live in a world that is afraid of the gray, or it's afraid of that in between black and white, on or off, masculine or feminine. There's a whole dynamic spectrum between polarities. And do you notice that the system itself is very afraid of that infinite spectrum between black and white, between on and off, between the polarities? There's infinite possibility, infinite spectrum. This is a spiritual truth. And look how limited we are as human beings right now. And I think this is kind of part of the crux of what's happening with the energies around the equinox that are coming up and where we are just as a human species. Where I was beginning this talk with around true diversity. True diversity means living in that infinite spectrum of possibility, that infinite part of the rainbow between on and off or black and white. And so again, on Facebook, you're assigned this trustworthiness score. Somehow you can't be in the gray. You can't be like sometimes trustworthy and sometimes not trustworthy. I mean, isn't that just who we are as human beings, right? Some days we have good days, some days we have bad days. Some days we tell the truth and some days we tell kind of not so much the truth because we're maybe afraid that we're not going to get what we want, right? We're human beings. We're up, down, all around, sometimes emotional, sometimes logical. We're not machines. And there is this kind of like machine intelligence that's operating the show that denies the full spectrum of humanity. And this fear of the full spectrum of humanity is actually a very, very old story of suppression. Again, when we look to nature, we see that infinite diversity, that true model of infinite diversity, all cohabitating and integrating and supporting each other in a kind of like infrastructure of life. But in the machine mind of on or off, there is no dynamic in between. So again, Facebook is giving you already has in place. You can Google this right now. Facebook has assigned you a trustworthiness score. You will never know what that score is. Either you're on or off, you're trustworthy or you're not trustworthy. But going forward, they are already putting in place, because of the real actual pressure from Congress here in the United States, they are already putting in place, like as if your information is not already scanned for the sake of advertisers, but your information, your content will be further scanned as to whether or not it's considered subversive or what they deem fake news. Ladies and gentlemen, never forget the stuff that you see on the mainstream media is fake news. Those are paid fucking actors that tell you what's up. Okay? Paid actors for a corporation that has other interests. Okay? You discover who owns NBC and you discover who owns CNN and every news organization. And you're going to be pretty astounded as to the agenda of what's going on. How do we get toxic people out of our life? Hang up the telephone. And being the psychic telephone. And to examine, why do you have them in your life to begin with? Because you wanted them. And this is radical honesty of what we experience in life. You didn't necessarily manifest it, but what we all have is called an inner dialogue, an inner narrative as to who we are and what we're going to experience. And this is also connected to the theme of this equinox of discovering who you are and really living who you are. We have to examine that inner narrative of what we're continually signed up for, be it our possibilities as well as our limitations, So there's a lot of inner narrative to expose right now. And I think, again, when we look at, how people are living their life on Instagram and Facebook, that can be inspiring. But it can also be very antagonizing because there's this weird human side to us that's like, it wants to belong. So we're like, oh, well, I'm inspired by that person. Maybe I should live my life like them. So one, I can get their approval. And then two, I can belong to something that looks on the outside highly successful. When in fact, what I see a lot on Instagram, and I'll take responsibility for the things that inspire me, actually kind of some of the accounts that simultaneously inspire me and intimidate me are really narcissistic people who are living a life of extreme luxury that it's just highly narcissistic, you know? It's just really narcissistic at the end of the day. And not that they're clinically narcissistic, but, you know, because I think that term is real, but it also gets handed out way too easily. Like, not all of us are actually trained psychologists that can actually determine whether or not a person is narcissistic. We can just say someone is sometimes selfish, or they're living a lavish lifestyle that has nothing to do with actually helping people. And so when I look, you know, again, I don't recommend it, but, you know, look, I looked at CNN, I look at BBC World News to check in and to see what the narrative is in the mainstream. And there are fucked up agendas going on. We know they're crazy agendas based around globalization and based around greed. You know, look, people still have their oil monopolies and they want to dominate them for the sake of just, you know, keeping their slice of their pie that they've created. And that comes at the cost of destabilizing whole entire countries. It comes at the cost of the lives of women and children and good men. And you see this happening in countries like Yemen and Syria, and yet nothing's really being done about it. And so when I look at Instagram accounts of people who are living this lavish lifestyle while simultaneously this shit is going down in Yemen, I don't know what to say. I think we've been trained to live really fucking selfish lives while not taking responsibility and looking the other way while these crazy agendas go down. In, like I said, in countries like Syria and Yemen, I mean, it's completely fucking fucked. And look, we don't all have that power to change something, but maybe we do. Maybe we don't even realize the power that we have to change things that are going along a line of agenda. Because remember, nothing on earth is preordained. You know, it's just other human beings deciding to do fucked up things in the name of greed, and somehow exciting enough other people to get paid to do the same thing. It's just insane. It's really, really insane. And so not to overwhelm this conversation with something that may be out of our realm of influence, but it does make me think of, like, what are we selling ourselves on Instagram? Is it really realistic to be a globe-trotting supermodel who does ayahuasca on the weekends and then does a photo shoot in Paris the next day, and you know, that sort of lifestyle? You know, are we really selling that that's what, you know, is possible? So I'm just throwing this all out. You know, tell me how you're doing. Tell me what you're going through. You know, we're about a few days away from the equinox. And maybe we get in touch with an energy of equilibrium, you know? Maybe we get in touch with who we really are in the face of what's popular, which is really just another kind of photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of the lifestyles of the rich and famous. And I don't mean to hate on anybody who's deciding to be really, really rich and fly around the world and you know, do ayahuasca one day and be a supermodel the next, and then drive around in a luxury car and then tell me that that's enlightened, you know? Meanwhile, there's fucking children dying by the fucking thousands because of genocide. You know what I mean? Hey, just another day on Earth. But still we have a handle on it that we could change this. So just seeing what 50 and Feisty Gigi, you're saying thoughts on Musk saying that we live in a simulation. Definitely we live in a projection. I can say that. And, the interesting connection there about technology, especially like our cell phones and our computers, he laid down on one of the latest interviews he did with Joe Rogan. He really said something very interesting. He said, we're already cyborgs. Because what is a telephone? What is a smartphone? A smartphone is just an extension of abilities that we already have, right? What's the number one thing that we look for in a smartphone is memory. Well, you have memory. You have eyes like a camera. You have all the features of the smartphone. It's just a device that mirrors your own ability. And so in some ways we are already, that kind of cyborg thing. And are we living in a simulated reality? We're definitely living in, like I said, a projection of consciousness. And, it's a question of what sort of group experience are we all signed up for? Do we have to continue with the collective energy of what's being going on here? Or can we all strike out on our own and live what's more true for us? Odekaua, being indigenous Maori and watching other people writing your stories in a shit light and having this platform to mass produce the boxes you're proposed to live in. Yeah. Really rips your undies. Yeah. There's just a lot of shit narratives out there. And I see incredible disrespect to indigenous people all day, every day. Be that from, say, copying designs, and then getting those designs reproduced in China or India, and then selling those designs back to people in the country at outrageous prices. So that's just a continual theme that's going on with Native Americans and Maori. And it seems no matter who you are, ripping off indigenous culture and selling it back to people who are disconnected from that culture at a high premium seems to be a real fucking trend. And there are people I know who are on the warpath calling that out every day. And it's a very important conversation because indigenous artists who could supply, who are willing to be hired, could be given a great life sharing their culture in a proper and respectful way. Look, like people want to buy indigenous things. Like, I don't think that should be shot down, but I think the whole system could be redesigned where we actually hire the real indigenous people so that we know the stories. And when we buy something, we are buying it out of support and respect and appreciation. So one, that we're supporting the culture, and two, we're also not buying these things to then mimic the culture that we ignore and or oppress or suppress, but rather just to celebrate, and to be aware and to be educated as to who the people we share this planet with, and to the people who have been, because of this matrix agenda, this manifest destiny, this globalization, the people who have been really shut out because indigenous wisdom doesn't have a place in the matrix. It doesn't, because indigenous wisdom is the knowledge of being harmony with nature. And when you're in harmony with nature, which is the whole thing that I stand for, you're in tune with your true power. You're in tune with how things are actually manifested. And when you're in tune with your own self-worth and self-love and your own powers of creation, because you live in harmony with not only the earth, but the entire existence of nature, why would you need to buy your power? Why would you need to buy inclusion into a universe that already includes you, right? So we're looking for fake inclusion when all the while the universe is like, you're already included, dog. You're already included. You're already loved. You already belong. What's all this crazy effort to be somebody in order to belong when you already belong? And so there's a great ownership of our power that is, of course, occurring right now. The great ownership and cleansing of all our addictions to living in a fake and a manufactured world that takes from nature in order to exist, but doesn't acknowledge that nature so that it becomes sustainable. And so we live in an era where every indigenous tribe is poor as fuck and also being ignored and shut out because they have no value. They are devalued by the matrix itself because their wisdom, of course, if was integrated into the matrix, well, the matrix wouldn't exist because we would be like, why are we doing this? And I think, of course, more and more people, we all understand. We're like, this is ridiculous. Why are we doing any of this? And so I just kind of want to round, at the beginning I was going off on, look, we have to, that same theme of how the indigenous are being ignored. I'm giving you the red flag now. The internet is changing and independent voices will, like indigenous or self-aware, self-realized and independent media, are going to be shut out of the main conversation very soon. And so information that I'm bringing forth is having to compete with the narcissistic hyperdrive. And I am having to examine where I'm going to place my media and where it's going to live, because I'm not going to be participating forever on Instagram and Facebook. And I will be putting everything on the website, and the only way you can find me and find the media will be on the website. So I'm shifting in that direction because I don't think this independent voice is really given the spotlight and the attention, from a corporate entity that really is just there to sell you more deception in the form of products you think you need. Definitely one cannot exist without the other. Everything is connected. Source, potential, not so much recognition, but remembering that you are limitless. Yeah, we've got to remember that we're limitless. And Gigi, how do we stay connected in an internet that's about to get really limited in its diversity of opinion? Yeah. I think we're going to have, okay, so okay, look, no matter how old you are, you do remember an internet that was pre-Facebook. Okay, we all had access to an internet 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. Go back to that internet before even MySpace. What you had to do, or let me just say this, what social media has done and what applications like Instagram has done, it has capitalized upon our need for ease. It's easy to turn on one app and find everything, right? It's easy to turn on Instagram and see all your friends collected in one space, right? So in one sense, it's created a little bit of, it's capitalized upon our need for ease, which is also kind of our need for being lazy. It's easy to, like I said, click a button and find everything under one roof. It's kind of like the same of like Amazon, right? Everything's been Amazoned, right? It's all under one roof, so why go anywhere else? But we all know that phrase, convenience kills. There's a high price to all this convenience. And it's the diversity of expression, really. Because every one of these platforms has community guidelines, which means you can't show your nipples, you can't talk about certain things now, and that's going to get clamped down even further. I shared a quick little news article this week. If people are familiar with that phenomena, AMSR, it's where people whisper. It's like a therapy where people whisper on YouTube into these binaural, microphones, and it's very relaxing. That is now considered porn. Whispering on videos is considered porn. And you can read about that. I found the article on Engadget, and PayPal shut down several accounts, YouTube accounts, because whispering was considered porn. If whispering is considered porn, I'm just trying to say, if you start talking about politics, do you think you might get shut down if whispering is considered porn? If you start calling out the Matrix going forward, do you think that might get shut down? If whispering is getting shut down because it's considered porn, you better believe you're not going to be talking about too much going on. So anyway, where do we connect if this shit is going down? You're going to have to start going to websites rather than being, hooked on convenience. The other part that Facebook and Instagram capitalizes on is your kind of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. If I don't go there and I see everyone, then I'm going to miss out. So there's something psychological where we have a fear of missing out if I don't see everything. But that in itself is a new phenomena, and we have to change that in ourselves. Like, look, if I don't check in with Instagram every day, I'm actually going to be fine. And notice what we do too. In that fear of missing out, we kind of get into the scroll. Okay, I looked at 150 posts, right? So you got width. I saw 200 posts. I saw 300 posts. I know what's going on. I'm caught up. But you didn't have depth. You didn't stay on one post for 30 minutes and really think about the picture. You didn't think about the words. You didn't sit with the words. I mean, of course, sometimes we do. I'm not saying you don't, but in general essence, notice when we scroll through 300 pictures rather than just find one and sit with that for 30 minutes and be like, what was the writer writing? What were they thinking? I'm going to engage. I'm going to write a paragraph of my own, so that sort of thing. We have bad habits, and these apps know how to capitalize on those bad habits. I think going forward, I'm going to be investigating, hey, where do I host my website? I may host my website like offshore, and there are ways to host websites where they are outside of the United States. I'm going to be looking at all sorts of alternative forms that will safeguard my personal website as a place to not get fucked with, but censorship is on the rise. Everything you see in China as far as censorship will be here in 1 to 2 years. And it's no joke. Like I said, there's already the trustworthiness score that's on Facebook. That's already been implemented. You can read about that. Congress in the United States right now is already enacting laws and voting upon limiting the types of news you will have access to leading up to the next election cycle on social media. I guarantee when that law is passed, which is very soon because they want to have it in place before the next election cycle, if you start talking politics in the next election cycle and sharing news stories, you will be shut down because what's already voted in the European Union is that you are not authorized to share news. And that's what they just voted on in the European Union. They just voted on a tax. They call it, it's like the link tax. You can look this up. The European Union voted on the thing called link tax, meaning you can't link to a news story unless you pay the actual news agency money to link to their own article. People will not be able to afford to link to news in the future in Europe because you have to pay money to have a link. Like, you're going to have to investigate this on your own, but it's fucking nuts. So that level of the internet's getting shut down. And I bring that up not to get into like politics, but look, the reality is there's a shift occurring. They know there's a shift going on. And we're just going to have to learn how to work together in different ways. And look, we know how to work together in different ways. We've just become hooked on the internet. We've become lazy. But listen, how old is the human species? We know how to work together before the internet. Okay? So find your tribe, get physical. You know, it doesn't have to look totally apocalyptical, right? But look, it's time to connect on the physical. This has been very convenient that we can turn on a switch and reach the entire planet, and I hope it continues. But if it doesn't, well, look, we know what to do because we invented everything here. We're capable human beings, and we've existed long before technology and long before the internet. So I think, yeah, it's very scary what's going to happen. So we'll figure it out. I'm going to continue to think about it. I don't have quite the answer yet, other than to tell you, look, I think more hardcore information, my hardcore information, it's just all going to be on my website. I'm not going to even bother to compete on Instagram. I don't want to feed the lazy beast. I just feel like the values of what Instagram gets people hyped on is not authentic, even though there is good information and great people here. Of course, it's how we're finding each other right now. But we've got to figure out how to keep this physical. Speaking of the physical, I actually have my first 2-day masterclass that I'm leading outside of Denver, Colorado, end of October. I should put it in the comment section here. Go to theobsidianblade.com/rise, IRSE, theobsidianblade.com/rise. And you can read about my 2-day masterclass. It's called Rise of the Cosmic Creator. And it's going to be a 2-day masterclass on how to harmonize with with the directions, the 4 directions, the 5th, all the directions, the instructions on how to be a master creator here on Earth by doing a lot of healing work and reconnecting to nature so that we can be empowered collaborators and co-creators with the Mother Earth, with the universe, to live that life that we are looking to live, but to live that life that we're looking to live in a way that's in harmony with the intelligence of the universe. So I want people to manifest the life that they want. I want people to find their uniqueness, but I want to train you to do that in the way that's in harmony with your authentic self and in harmony with nature itself. And I'm doing the master class, with a powerful medicine woman. I want to get her full name, Miranda. It's just going to be so good. So again, go to theobsidianblade.com/rise. You can read all about it there. It's going to be potent. I'm going to be bringing that class. This is the first time I'm doing the class, but I'm definitely going to be doing this class more around the United States and hopefully the planet. So this is the first one to get our roots in the ground and see what's going there. I just want to kind of bring up the listing right now so I can read you some stuff. But yeah, I do hope you check that out. I think you will find it quite amazing. And so I'm doing the weekend with Miranda Bennett, and her full name is Miranda Bennett Thunder Medicine Owl. She has a ranch in Elizabeth, Colorado called the Boundless Bee Ranch. We're going to be doing this all in a powerful sacred lodge. So it's very, it's going to be strong, you know. This is basically, as I've kind of put in the directions here, or the description, this is going to be your reintroduction to the 9 directions of the great tree of life, known and lived and traversed by all the ancient cultures of the earth before the great amnesia. It's a reclaiming of your heritage and fortune to be both a navigator of existence and an infinite co-creator with it. And this is the first step in the shift back to the garden of life that reaches across this galaxy with the Mother Earth as we shift into the Aquarian age under the light of the 6th sun. So again, what does all of that mean? It's about you creating the life that you want in harmony with the divine feminine, divine masculine, and the cosmos at large. And so that's what this training is going to be all about. Yes, at Boundless Warrior, Miranda Bennett. Yes, I'm doing it with her. Again, that's going to be October. What's our official date? We're like October 27th and 28th outside of Denver, Colorado, in a place called Elizabeth, Colorado. Again, to go to theobsidianblade.com/rise. It's going to be a potent weekend of deep healing and medicine work and empowerment and training. You know, I'm bringing a lot of information from my Toltec wisdom teachers there to guide you in so many ways, and to delve in and ooh, I can't even begin. It's just go check out the website. It's just gonna be deep. It's time to do some really, really deep work that is legit as fuck. And that's what I represent. And part of that quest is to appreciate and understand the true history of the Americas, the Mayans, the Toltecs, the indigenous of this land that have one of the most superb cosmologies on the planet. And when you dive into the cosmology of the Mexica and the Maya, you actually tap into the universal tree of life that is known by all cultures across this world, yet uniquely expressed. So isn't that a really interesting thing? You know, look, the true matrix of life has its fundamental principles, right? There is a tree of life. There is a way that the cosmos creates existence, and we can learn that. But that universal truth, that one truth, can be expressed in infinite ways. And that's what we're going to relearn through understanding and appreciating the history of the Aztec Mexica cosmology, and also tapping into the Celtic tree of life, and seeing how this is our remembering and our healing of how to become cosmic creators once again in alignment with the Mother Earth. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. How are you feeling? What are you dealing with? What are you contending with? You know, I'm here to serve. in whatever capacity you need as far as clarity. Remember, I think one of the things that we're all doing is we're cleansing the personality and the inner narrative that we created in reaction to a life that's based in the matrix. I think a lot of the pain and the suffering is due to our disconnection to our truth and our power, which means harmonizing with nature. And so we are needing to become who we really are and not a photocopy of people who are just successful in the matrix. I want you to be successful. I want you to live the life that you want, but not become a photocopy of people who are still just living a life of just being a baller in the matrix. That's just not really it at the end of the day. I just want to bring up a note that I wrote yesterday morning in my meditation. Let's see if I can find it. Where are you? Dang, I'm not really finding it. Oh well, we're fucked. I can't find it. Well, here we are. This is the plan. Let's continue to unfuck ourselves from healing a personality that's just caught up in some sort of other game other than being who we are, And I don't know if we can see. If I quickly find it, look, morning notes, boom, I'm going to find it. I know I'm going to double click here. Here we go. I'll just leave it at this. This is kind of partly what we're becoming when we do deep meditation work and we really relax the sympathetic nervous system. When we remove ourselves from fight or flight, a lot of what we're doing in the world is not noticing that our body is actually been normalized to a perpetual state of fight or flight. So again, my main prescription always is meditation, a deep relieving of tension in the body through breath work so that the sympathetic nervous system can actually unwind. Once you start unwinding the sympathetic nervous system, you start to tap into yourself as becoming a being of energy. So this is what I wrote. Becoming a being of energy. The thing you already are, but you just haven't paid attention to. Kind of other note in there. So when we meditate, we focus upon releasing tension in the body. To release tension in the body is to feel its energy along with the previous thinking that held that energy frozen. And then the release of that energy and the thinking so that you may flow once again. So in deep meditation, there is the exposure of that which that you assume. So the context of your life that you hang up in your mental mind, an arbitrary emotional view of the world that you orbit around and therefore are bound to, limited to, when in any given moment you can liquidate that frame of thinking and then have no frame at all. The liberating moment to discover the context that holds the context that holds the context. Glad to see everyone here. You are the shift crew. You're doing the work. So in meditation, this depth of meditation that I'm prescribing, that I do every morning for an hour a day, is to unwind that sympathetic nervous system. And once you start doing that, you begin to feel your actual energy. You're not in a defensive mode anymore. You're actually in a mode of where you're feeling the energy move up and down your system and push and pull. And it's a very magnetic state. You ever play with two magnets and you go like you push against them, right? And they bounce off of each other. That's actually the beginning of the feeling of energy that you will begin to have in your body. Once you relax the sympathetic nervous system to that state, you actually begin to feel the energy in your body because you're no longer in tension. Which tension is the result of you holding a thought in your mind, a reactionary thought, a view of the world is giving you tension. And so when you let go of your view of the world, you actually begin to relax. You're no longer reacting against the world or thinking about the world, which holds a world in place that you then orbit around. Once you start melting that away, you're no longer in tension against that thought. So that's what we have to do in our deep shamanic breathwork meditation is finding the tension, bringing breath to it and deep relaxation, but to realize that every tension you have, the body is just an afterthought of the mind. The body follows the mind. There's a sequence to this. The body follows mind. Body gives tangibility to your thoughts. That's the beauty of the marriage of the mind and body, is that body, your dedicated partner, lets you know the quality of your own thinking by giving you the feeling of your thinking. Body is so dedicated to you, it gives you the actual physical state, the quality of your own thinking to let you know that's what you're thinking. So if you want to change the body, you have to change the thinking that's behind, that's mimicking the thinking. The body is a mirror to your mind. Talk about unification. You want to relax the body, you've got to relax the mind. What is the mind doing? Catch yourself. This is a little homework. At any given time today, catch yourself. What emotional cloud, what context are you holding in your mind that you're reacting your life to, that you're orbiting your life around? There can be a cluster of synapses that we're repeatedly engaging. But remember, true liberation is to remember that you're free to think anything you want and you're free to think nothing at all. That's true liberation. Creativity and freedom. Catch yourself. What is the cluster of thoughts you're holding consciously or subconsciously that you're in reaction to? And realize you have the ability and freedom to not think those thoughts at all, to let them go. Now, I'm not saying if you're driving a car, pretend you're not driving a car. I'm not saying that. If you're driving the car, drive the car. But in the safe space where you're not engaged in anything, notice that you're holding onto something. A context of what you think the world is rather than what the world is. Again, you're holding an emotional context of what you think the world is, or what you think you have to do, or what you think you have to be in reaction to what you think the world is, rather than not thinking anything and actually experiencing the world as it is. You can catch yourself like this all day, every day, and notice that it's like an addiction. Like you keep going back to the heroin needle of this non-negotiated mental state, meaning you don't actually sit down and consciously assemble your mind. You're defaulting to thinking this is the way it is. And your default thinking causes you limitation. It causes you stress. It causes you to be in reaction to it. So you can catch yourself doing this, but the only way you can probably catch yourself doing this is if you're more practiced in meditation, where you actually don't think anything at all. And it's not that you don't think anything in meditation. That's not quite true. What you get from meditation is the ability to be in a state where a thought arises and a thought falls away, and you're not attached to it. So you have the ability to create distance and the ability to see a thought as a thought rather than being the thought, right? So it's like in Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about thoughts as like clouds, right? There's that phrase, I am not the weather, I'm the sky. I'm the sky, not the weather, right? So really your pure state of mind is like a pure blue sky, but thoughts are like clouds that float across that sky or in front of the sun. They're not reality, they're temporary, right? They come, they go, they come, they go, but you really, in essence, you are the sky or you are the sun, and getting in that state. So once you practice that in meditation, then at any given moment of the day, you check in with it. Do check in with yourself. I think that's the homework. Check in with yourself. What am I thinking right now? Am I in stressful reaction to that thinking? What am I assuming about the world? What is my collective assumption about the world right now that I'm in reference to? And if I start letting that go, I might actually just feel a lot better. I might just feel more relaxed. Because who says you have to think anything? Nobody. You don't have to think anything. It's completely your free will, along with a chemical addiction to thinking certain thoughts. The payoff of holding an inner narrative. Remember, we're drug dealers. Remember that. We are all drug dealers. Whether you feel happy from your own thinking or you feel depressed, the truth is you like the drugs that you create. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep making them. We make them in the hypothalamus, I believe. This is the inner pharmacy up here this is your inner drug dealer. Whether you think good thoughts or bad thoughts, you're addicted to them because you like the emotional chemical payoff. Or you've just been trained, especially in regards to negative thinking, negative emotional generation. You've trained yourself to get high on that supply and then forgotten that you have other options. So I'm not saying you're too much of a sadistic fuckhead or bastard or bitch. My language. But, compassion. We've been trained. We've been trained to get high off negativity. And this is part of our liberation, is to expose the chemical addiction to defeat or to the chemical addiction to negativity and slowly, because it takes time, to turn that boat around. Instagram's giving me the 1 minute warning that this power hour is up. It was interesting. How I began this episode, I was just like, wasn't really sure what I was going to go into. And I've kind of like jumped around a lot, but I hope that I've done my bit of just being a beacon of clarity and truth. Send me a direct message if you have anything that you're going through or you want to share with me. And please check out theobsidianblade.com/rise to check out the 2-day event that's going on end of October outside of Denver, Colorado, where we're going to be diving into the theme of the actuality of you rising up as a cosmic creator to be in harmony with nature and to live the life that you want. So I love you so much. I love all of you. Love is the drug. And I'll chat with you next week, next Wednesday. Okay. Kisses. Bye.